cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition, another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm your co-host, Machel and Santokie here, and with me as ever is the other half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Santokie Nagulendran. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, Mash, I'm excited, you know, the world has been waiting, all eyes, the grandest stage of all is set, the showcase of Immortals is nearly upon us, Mash. It's that time of year when, legends are made in front of about 5 fans and their dog. It's the Super 50, the regional tournament, and it's kicking off in about 6 days' time as of recording, and we're here to preview the 8 teams taking part, the key men, what to look out for, and generally, build up this tournament taking place in the coming days. For
sure. Who wants to watch the World Cup when the Super 50 Cup is going on? A mere 1 week away before we get started. But just before we went on air, Santokie, I was actually looking at the former winners of the Super 50 Cup, and I looked at the former winners, the top run scorers, top wicket takers, and without trying to kind of disparage the quality of the competition, we're down bad when you think about Super 50, right? So these are the previous 5 winners of Super 50. Last year, defending champs, Jamaica. Before them, Trinidad and Tobago. Before them, just before COVID, the West Indies emerging team. Before them, CCC. Before them, Windward Islands. Now, 2 out of the previous 5 winners of the competition have technically been, on paper, 2 of the weakest teams in the competition in terms of CCC and the West Indies Academy. You could even throw in Windward Islands, because it's not like the Windward Islands win a lot when it comes to domestic competitions, right? So in some senses, on one hand, you go, well, Super 50 is a very unpredictable tournament. Barbados haven't won the famed Barbados haven't won it since 2016, 2017. Guyana haven't won it since 2005, 2006. When Jamaica won it last year, that was their first title in 10 years. So in fairness, you could argue it's a low quality but super competitive tournament in that you genuinely have no favorites. It's never as simplistic as, right, the strongest team on paper is likely to win Super 50, because it's just so unpredictable. But before you come in, I should also just point out this. I looked at who have been the top run scorers in this competition over the last 5 years. Last year, Rovman Powell. The year before that, Jason Mohammed. The year before that, Kieran Powell. Before that, Jonathan Carter. Before that, Roston Chase. And before Roston Chase, it was Kieran Powell again. Now, this before I even get to top wicket takers, what's quite interesting to me, Santokie, if I just reading out that list of top run scorers, is none of those players, so I'll say them again, Rovman Powell, Jason Mohammed, Kieran Powell, Jonathan Carter, Roston Chase, none of them have gone on to be successful ODI players for the West Indies team. So not only Super 50, super unpredictable tournament in terms of winners, but recent history suggests to us that it doesn't lead to actually helping the West Indies ODI side in any shape or form in terms of identifying who might be the players you need to pick. If you look at last year's top bowlers, it was shared, right? It was 15 wickets between Shannon Gabriel got 15, Odean Smith got 15, Nicholson Gordon got 15. 1 year later, Santokie, none of them are in the West Indies ODI side. None of them are in the side. So, do you see where I'm coming from, Santokie? Yeah. It's our premier 50-over tournament, but I don't know what it means really in the context of West Indies cricket.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's almost held it's almost held in isolation in terms of its relation to West Indies cricket, because in theory, Shannon Gabriel, as the leading wicket taker, obviously he's a senior player, but he got called up for the South Africa tour, didn't play. Then we haven't seen him since in the ODI setup. But in theory, if you have a domestic tournament, 50-over tournament, surely the top performers, especially the leading wicket taker, in a West Indies side that struggles to take wickets, surely you give them at least one game, one ODI game or something, just to show like this is the pathway to make the team. So it's weird. It sort of exists in an isolated bubble. Like you said at the top though, Mash, if you're a fan of a nation in a region, it's unpredictable. So it's certainly exciting in that regard. Also as well, one small silver lining from us not qualifying for the World Cup, it means every player in the region is pretty much available for the sides. But however, as you also rightly emphasized, Machel, it's unpredictable because essentially it is a low quality tournament. And other than diehard fans in the region, not many eyes are realistically going to be watching it. But you never know, Mash. We've got the West Indies Academy side this year again. Some young players might make a name for themselves. We might see some outstanding performances. So we watch it in optimism, I think is safe to say. And with the added context that this is probably the most important Super 50 in a long time, bearing in mind we haven't qualified for the World Cup. This is essentially the start of the new cycle. If we were in a Big Three nation, we'd be calling this a white ball reset. However, we don't have enough players to have a reset. So this is like a white ball refresher. So who can make a name for themselves in this cycle leading towards the 2027 World Cup in South Africa? So Mash, we're going to go through it. There's 8 teams. I think it's only right we start with, the defending champions, your home team, the Jamaica Scorpions. So if you want to put up the lineup we've got for the announced squad, and obviously there's one big recent omission from this side, but we'll get into that. Mash, overall thoughts on this Jamaica Scorpion squad?
So, I mean, the first thing to kind of talk about is if you had said in last year's Super 50 that the Scorpions were going to be the winning side, nobody would have predicted that, right? And I remember from last year's competition that Rovman Powell came out of it with almost like glowing references about his style of captaincy. He was the top run scorer in the competition. He led from the front. Him and Brandon King basically led from the front in terms of Scorpions. Nicholson Gordon led from the front with the ball. And Jamaica were one of those teams where it was like they were better than the sum of their parts, probably due to Powell's leadership. Off the back of that, Powell got back into the ODI side and promptly produced nothing and is now dropped from the West Indies ODI side, right? So that just is a microcosm of that point that you made about how much does Super 50 tie in to West Indies. Now, the Jamaica Scorpion squad is super experienced. Okay, Rovman Powell needs no introduction. Andre McCarthy is in his late 30s. Jermaine Blackwood is 31. And Nkrumah Bonner is 35. Chadwick Waldron is 38. Fabian Allen is an international. Aldine Smith is an international. Sheldon Cottrell's 33 now. Dennis Bulai is 36. Nicholson Gordon is 31. The only real new players you see in that side are Brad Barnes, who's been scoring quite significantly domestically in Jamaica domestic cricket, and Shalom Parnell, who's a brand new face on the scene, left armour in the Jamaica team. But everybody else is a familiar name. Obviously, Kurt McKenzie's now West Indies international. It's good to see someone like Fabian Allen there commit to playing some 50-over cricket. But and it's a similar theme we're gonna go across all of the teams in some regards. The overwhelming sense I have is when Jamaica has to inevitably have to do a changing of the guard, they're going to be in a situation, right? Because a lot of those players are all going to retire at the same time. McCarthy, Bulai, Bonner, Walton, etc. They can't just keep playing mid-30 to late 30-year-olds. So when you don't succession plan as any type of sports team, when you don't succession plan and then you face a situation where 4 or 5 players all leave at the same time, you will suffer for it because you haven't thought about what comes next. And the most obvious name that everyone's been calling out for, who we think will be in the CCC side, is Johnson, obviously, who's made all the runs for West Indies under-19, super talented. Everybody's been talking about him for the longest while. My understanding was that he was going to be picked for the West Indies Academy. He wasn't because the Jamaica Scorpions had requested to pick him. He's not there. I don't know why. I don't know the reasoning behind it. But surely if you have a super talented under-19 player who scores 3 centuries away from home in a build-up to a World Cup for under-19s, is he not a better pick than an Andre McCarthy? Is he not a better pick than a Chadwick? Like, where's the justification, Santokie?
For me, Mash, this squad is a travesty. You know what? Because, like you said, they picked a lot of senior players. Look, if you're looking at that top order lineup, you got Andre McCarthy, Bonner, Blackwood, Chadwick Walton, who, what is he, 38? I don't know how Chadwick Walton's still getting picked in this side. But for me, the main thing is Jamaica won the title last year. So you've got that out of the way. You've got that success with this group of players. So for me, at least start some sort of refresh. As you said, they've just continued with the same names. Obviously, the two unfamiliar names, Shalom Parnor, Brad Barnes, heard good things about him putting together runs domestically in Jamaica. But generally, Mash, there's nothing really. If you're Desmond Haynes, a West Indies selector, you're looking at these names and thinking, we've given all these guys goes, man. Like, who's going to prove themselves in this tournament? So it's disappointing to see. I think if you're looking at it purely from a Jamaican perspective, obviously it's got the experience, which is a massive strength. But I just think, like you said, Mash, there could be some Mansing, the leg spinner. Why aren't we investing in a leg spinner? Why isn't he in the side? Why is Dennis Boulay in the side? Like, what at his age? Surely we should be looking at new spinners coming into this squad. So from a West Indies perspective, which is what we're going to try and do when we're talking about these sides, disappointing. But as you said, it's a theme. It's not just Jamaica in isolation doing this. It's a theme across all the teams. So I just think, there's nothing really to get excited about in this Jamaica Scorpion squad. Essentially, we know what the players can do. We've seen them play for numerous years for the most part. So for me, it's just, they've gone with an experienced squad who they can hope take them to the title. But as a West Indies fan, it doesn't really fill me with much optimism.
Yeah, from a West Indies perspective, you're only looking at, can Kurt McKenzie do anything? Can Fabian do anything? Odean's always going to be on the fringes or there and thereabouts. But is anybody else there realistically going to get a West Indies look in? And like you say, it all speaks to the lack of joined up thinking. People are caught in their national feelings and not thinking about what does this mean for wider West Indies cricket. And like you say, Dennis Boulay, with no disrespect to him, he's 36 years old. You mean to tell me that Mansing, who's 26, it just don't make no sense. It don't make sense. It don't make no sense, bro.
Obviously, the big talking point, Brandon King, West Indies opener, not in the side, injured, has been replaced by Andre McCarthy. He was the third leading run scorer. And obviously, you'd like to see him get experience, more experience ahead of the West Indies series against England. He's missing. But I think, Mash, he'll be a vital component missing from this 11.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how the I was about to say the Taloas. It'll be interesting to see how the Scorpions batting lineup is constructed without Brandon King. Even now, I'm looking at going, what is it, Walton and McKenzie opening? Like, I don't know, but it'll just be interesting to see. Last year, they depended a lot on Powell and King. When all else failed, you're looking at Powell and King. Obviously, you've got Bonner there, you've got Blackwood there, so you'd like to think they've got some international standard run makers there. But it's not a weak squad, Santokie. No. It just doesn't mean anything from a West Indies perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say, for those watching this show, you're either going to be of two ways of thinking. For the most part, we hope you're thinking in terms of West Indies selectors. But if you're a Jamaican fan, out and out, just hoping for Jamaica to do as well as they can in Super 50, it's a good squad. But if you're thinking of the overall picture in terms of what it means for West Indies, it's a disappointing squad because we're not seeing as many new faces as we'd probably like to see in the 50-over tournament.
By all means, people get us in the comments below. We're just giving a snapshot. So, of course, I know there'll be people in the comments saying you didn't talk about this person. Why didn't you make this point? We're trying to cover 8 teams in less than 50 minutes. So this is all intended to be snapshot looks. Moving on, Santokie, let's go to Barbados Pride. Now, as I said at the top of the show, I don't think I've got it listed anymore. The Pride haven't won it, I think, since 2015, 2016. Everyone goes on and on about the strength of Barbados cricket, but they ain't done much when it comes to Super 50. They've picked a super strong squad, super experienced squad. Here's the names. Shea Hope, West Indies captain, Barbados captain. Craig Brathwaite, Shabar Brooks, Roston Chase, Dominic Drakes, Akeem Jordan, Javed Leacock, Carl Mayers, Jair McAllister, Zachary McCaskey, Russian Primus, Raymond Reefer, Kumar Smith, Jomel Warrican. only 3 of the players in that squad, Santokie, have not played for the West Indies. So we can't say that it's not a strong team. Most, like 92% of them, have played in some format for the West Indies before. But again, like Jamaica, there's a lot of plus 30s guys. Craig Brathwaite, Shamar Brooks, Roston Chase, Kyle Mayers is 30 odd now. Raymond Reefer. Surprised by the squad, Santokie?
I'm not surprised. Again, similar of Jamaica, disappointed. I mean, as much as we give Craig Brathwaite plaudits for his Red Bull exploits, at this point in his career, what is the point of him being in the Super 50 squad? I'm assuming, I mean, unless he still hopes he can make the West Indies ODI side, which I think is very unlikely, there's not really any point to this other than getting game time for himself in terms of, again, thinking of that wider picture. But as you said, Mash, super experienced squad. Shai Hope as captain, one of the leading performers in world cricket in terms of 50 over. So he'll get to, lead the line. But generally, again, an experienced squad. But you're looking at Shamar Brooks, Roston Chase. We know what they can do. They've been in and out of the West Indies side for so many years now. It's sort of disappointing, again, not to see some fresh faces. I'm excited to see Akeem Jordan, Dominic Drakes continue, hopefully get some wickets in this tournament, build their confidence. I think Akeem Jordan was with the CCC when they won it under Carlos Brathwaite.
Yes, he did. Correct, yeah.
So good to see Akeem Jordan, Jay McAllister as well. He's someone who's been exciting in the past year in regional. So I'm excited to see the bowlers. I think the bowling, for me, has more optimism in terms of players who can sort of make a mark for themselves. But again, you're looking at, a Jamel Warrican, Raymond Reefer. We know what they can do. So I'm expecting a strong performance from Barbados Pride. They'll probably be targeting semi-finals at a minimum. But just again, Mash, where's the sort of new blood coming through? Where are we seeing them? Where are the opportunities being given?
Yeah, the Craig Brathwaite pick is like you. Unless Santokie, let's give Craig his due. Maybe Craig is saying, listen, I can't make a career off Red Ball alone. I need to make a run for the West Indies ODI side again. And okay, if, for example, Santokie, let's just say argument's sake, Craig Brathwaite plays the large majority of this tournament, Barbados get to the final, Brathwaite not only makes runs, but makes them at a strike rate of 100. I'm not going to say higher than 100, just 100. Technically, you could say, well, boy, that's good enough to get into the West Indies ODI side.
Bro, if you think I'm going to be sitting here in a year watching Tej Narayan and Craig opening ODIs, I'm retiring from the format, bro. But you know what, Mash? We're talking about Craig Brathwaite because he's been playing for so long, as if, he's a Shannon Gabriel age, like 35, 36. He's still 30. So in theory, he could make a comeback. I just think it's unlikely at this point in his career, but you never know. If he ends up being a leading run scorer in the tournament and he goes at a good strike rate, technically West Indies have nothing to lose. It's been a long time since he's been in the side. It's been about 8-9 years. So it would almost be like a new phase coming into the ODI setup, just because he hasn't been in that cycle of being in and out for the last 3-4 years, like most of the players. So stranger things have happened in West Indies cricket, but I just can't see it, Mash. I just think for me, I don't want to be disrespectful to Craig Brathwaite, but if you're looking at it from a West Indies perspective, it does feel like a waste of a spot to have him in this side.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be watching that keenly to see how he goes. But like you, I just want to reiterate that I'm with you. I think I'm intrigued to know how Akeem Jordan and Jair McAllister go. I think the West Indies side that got knocked out in the World Cup qualifiers was definitely light in terms of bowling. You and I have been talking about the fact that Jason Holder is likely to retire from ODI cricket sooner rather than later. There are spots that should be opening up on that West Indies ODI side if we are truly going on some kind of reset, right? And fundamentally, in terms of our fast bowling stock, I know Akeem Jordan's not fast; he's medium fast, and that's been nice to him, right? He's primarily a swing bowler, so there are spots in that ODI side to complement Alzari Joseph. So I think Jair McAllister and Akeem Jordan can do a lot for themselves if they put up some numbers in this year's tournament.
And I think just there for the one unfamiliar name, I think Kamar Smith is an off spinner. I think he's the brother of Dwayne Smith, former West Indies international player. So Kimar Smith, sort of an unrecognised name in that squad. But generally, like you said, Mash, it's a very experienced squad. So similar to Jamaica Scorpions, I'll expect them to go far in and of itself within this tournament.
Yeah, let's move on. So moving on to the Harpy Eagles. So Harpy Eagles finally got, well, it was the Guyana, what they call again, Amazon Warriors in CPL. Finally
man
got
said, man, this was what are they called again? Man said, man said, you dismissed them outright, you know.
The thing is, I was about to call them the Harpy Eagles, and I had to remember what their CPL name was. But obviously, it's not purely Guyana players in the Amazon Warriors side, but it definitely feels like it's a Guyana team when it's the Amazon Warriors. So they got the CPL title out, like that hoodoo's gone. They've long been first-class champions. Like there's no, everyone knows that they're a super strong first-class team, if not the strongest in the region. But surprisingly, Santokie, they've got no Super 50 title since 2005, 2006. Is this as good a time as any as the Guyana Harpy Eagles to win a Super 50 title?
Yeah, I think it is in terms of the experience in this squad. Again, like as we said at the top of the show, the same similar sort of patterns. You know, a lot of players who have been in the West Indies setup, current West Indies players, ex-West Indies internationals in this side. So a lot of experience. Last year, I think the problem was a lack of runs. We just couldn't put the runs together. Obviously, Tejnarai and Chandrapur left early to go to Australia for that test series, so we lost him. Chandrapur Hemraj was injured, so didn't take part. So I think Tevin Imlak was the leading scorer last year, followed by Shafane Rutherford. But generally, inability to hit big scores. The big concern is obviously the Guyana Inter-County Series, which took place last week. Only one side scored more than 205 across the 14 or so innings. And so that was between the counties, Demerara, Essequibo, Berbice. So that was disappointing. However, the head coach of the Guyana Harpy Eagles, Ryan Hercules, has essentially said the pitches in Guyana are rubbish. If you go overseas, there'll probably be better conditions for batting. So he's essentially said the quality is there. It's just the pitches weren't conducive to scoring runs. So it'd be interesting to see how we go. And more importantly, this is like the post Leon Johnson era. So, you know, Veersamy Pamour's taken over as captain. Anthony Brambles out, as well as Johnson. Christopher Barnwell's out. So there are sort of stalwarts of the last 10, 12 years who have gone from the side. So it's up for the new players to sort of take command. And I'm interested to see how I'm assuming it will be Hemraj and Chandrapur opening. They've never opened together in Super 50. I'm interested to see how they go, how they balance. If I was thinking outside the box, I would potentially go with Kevin Sinclair as an opener, just because in the inter-county tournament, he scored at a big strike rate, put together a lot of runs. We know him as a spinner, but we saw in the regional season earlier this year, his batting credentials, his ability to score runs. So if I was thinking outside the box, because again, Hemraj just played 6 ODIs for West Indies. He's in his 30s. We sort of know what he can do. Kevin Sinclair has shown he can be explosive at the top of the order. So I'd be tempted to kind of go with the two sort of juxtaposing players, Chandrapur and Sinclair, to see how they go. But I think based on experience, it will be Hemraj and Chandrapur. But you're looking in that middle order match, you've got, you know, Hetmeyer, Rutherford, Imlak, Romario, Shepherd. It's a very, very strong middle order on paper. So you're assuming on Trinidadian pitches, which are going to be slightly better than the Guyanese ones, this will be a side that can put runs together.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I'm from a West... Unlike the other teams thus far that we've spoken about, even though there's experienced players there, because we don't see a Shafane Rutherford for West Indies. So there's a subplot worth paying attention to. Tejnarai Chandrapur has been pigeonholed as a red ball player, but we've seen in T20 minor league cricket in the States that he has the ability to bat a lot quicker than his test performances so far have shown. So there's a story there. Kevlon Anderson, being part of the academy, is a young player coming up. There's a story there. Even a Tevin Imlak. I mean, it's taken him a while to cement his spot, but you kind of feel now that he's a key member of the Guyana team. So there's a lot of subplots there. My only concern looking at this Guyana team, because it's not being played in Guyana, the tournament's been played in Trinidad. If they come across pitches that aren't, like, you look at like Gudakesh Motie, we know what Motie can do. We know that Kevin Sinclair will be good with the ball. We know what Permol can do. Noel Smith, Ronsford Beaton, and Romario Shepherd on paper are good pace bowlers. But Beaton, there's always the cloud that will he get an action? Will there be an issue with his action? That's not his fault. It's just there's always going to be a cloud. Noel Smith should have been a lot further ahead in his career than he is at this particular point in time, I feel. And it just looks like there's a lot of pressure on Romario Shepherd's shoulders to have to bowl well. And actually, what I'll just come back to you and say, Santokie, I'm surprised Shamar Joseph didn't get in this squad.
Yeah, I was just going to go on that. You're spot on, Mash. I think the pace bowling is a weakness. It traditionally has been with the guy on the side. I think if you're looking at, a Noel Smith, Ronsford Beaton, they're sort of steady hands. They can do a job with the ball, but they're not, for me, match winners at this sort of level, or they haven't proven to be. Ronsford Beaton's been out of the game for a while, so I think he's lost a lot of his momentum over the past few years. Noel Smith, he's consistent in his performances, but again, I don't think he's at that level where he'll be taking loads of wickets at the Super 50. So again, Shamar Joseph, he's sort of come through the ranks this year. For those who don't know his story, quit his job as a security guard this year, got a call up to the Guyana 4-day side, played in the CPL final. Recently, we got a T10 deal in Abu Dhabi. He's not in the side, interestingly enough. He played in a practice game against the Guyana Harpy Eagles yesterday for essentially a Guyana Select 11. I'm surprised they just haven't put him in. Based on the momentum he has, you think he'd be a perfect opportunity. So, and it seems based on the fact he played in a practice match yesterday, it's unlikely he'll be playing for, CCC or anything. So he's someone we won't see in the tournament. So that's disappointing. So I just think Guyana Harpy Eagles are a side who look like they could be capable of hitting 300 if Hetmyer or Shepherd go, but then also look like they could concede 300 quite easily in the chase. So again, I think it's a very, very batting strong side, but the bowling is a big concern. So I wouldn't necessarily put them as favourites in this tournament.
Just before we move on, does Hetmyer need a big tournament? Or can he just get away with, middling his way through, play one big knock and to kind of remind everyone of his talent? Like, does he, it sounds silly because maybe I'm targeting Hetmyer here, but does he owe a performance where he kind of puts his stamp on proceedings and reminds the region that he is Shimron Hetmyer? Or are we never going to really see that again?
I think in terms of if you're looking at West Indies selection, I think he'll get picked even if he has an average tournament. I think for his own personal sort of principles, if it would be something he'd probably be looking at to stamp his authority and show, I'm sort of king of the region with the bat. But I think even if he had a middling tournament, just because he is Shimron Hetmyer and the reputation he has, I do think he'll end up getting picked for the ODI side. So I don't think it's necessary for him to have a big tournament, but I think he'll be definitely looking at it to sort of cement his place. Because if you're looking at it from his point of view, based on his account, he asked to be back in the West Indies side for the qualifiers. They didn't give him the opportunity. So it's almost as if surely, I know he played in that India series, but surely he'd want a point to prove to like everyone in the region that, this is my yard. Like I'm the big guy here. So hopefully that motivates him because, a free score in Shimron Hetmyer in 50 overs is good for West Indies cricket.
100%. Moving on, two, you can barely see them on the screen. So you can't see it because we haven't had the graphic sent through to us yet. And neither one of us has the skill set to make the graphic up.
I said it was limited operation budgets on all fronts,
I'm telling them, everyone's got to go up to the screen like this to see what it's saying. But this is the Leeward Islands Hurricane side. I'll just read it out for those who can't see it on their screen. Alzari Joseph, captain. Rakeem Cornwall, vice captain. Jamal Hamilton, Daniel Dorham, Jeremiah Louis, Justin Graves, Kieran Powell, Kofi James, Casey Carty, Terence Ward, Jewel Andrew, Hayden Walsh Jr., O'Shane Thomas, and Karima Gore. First things first, quite a few subplots there. First things first, Alzari Joseph, captain. Now, I know from speaking to quite a few followers of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast that I believe that Alzari actually was a captain at school level cricket. So this isn't something that's new to him, but it's new to, I think, a lot of wider cricket observers in the region. Mostly when we've seen Alzari Joseph play, he's vexed because somebody's dropped another one dropped another one off his bowling. So it'll be interesting to see how Alzari Joseph transitions into captaincy. But Leeward Islands have always been one of the more progressive teams in the region, you would say. Quite a lot of talent there that are yet to play for West Indies, who we know have a significant amount of ability. Obviously, Kofi James, Karima Gore, Casey Carty has played, 16 games for West Indies, but he's not cemented properly yet. Joel Andrew, the 16, 17-year-old sensation who was turning a lot of heads in Cool and Smooth, in the last edition of Cool and Smooth. O'Shane Thomas has gone to Leeward Islands to try and revitalize his career, and he's actually here to play a full season of 50-over cricket. So just calling those names, not to discount anybody else, but I think those are the key names to look at, Santokie.
Yeah, I think this is like an ideal composition of a squad you'd expect to see as a West Indies fan. It's got, as you mentioned, Kofi James, Alzari Joseph as captain. Be interested to see that dynamic. Rakeem Cornwall as vice captain. Obviously, be interested to see if Rakeem Cornwall, if he puts runs together, will he be up for consideration in the 50-over format? And you've got O'Shane Thomas, still young with a point to prove. So for me, there's a good core group of youngsters in this Leeward Island squad. But then you've also got, the likes of a Jamal Hamilton, Kieran Powell, Hayden Walsh Jr. in that side, just to add sprinkles of experience as well to help out alongside Alzari Joseph. So for me, they've struck a good balance between future prospects and experienced players, whereas it's not dominated by completely experienced players. There are sort of prospects going forward. Put it this way, half of this squad can still be playing Super 50 in the next 5-6 years because of their age. 100%. So yeah, for me,
that's a key point.
It's an ideal composition of a squad. They've sort of balanced it very correctly. So I'm very excited to see sort of what prospects can emerge and how they do under Alzari's captaincy.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was going to try and call specific positions and say, you know what, this is what West Indies are looking out for. But fundamentally, it doesn't matter, right? To me, pretty much every single position is open on the West Indies team, bar three positions maybe. Anybody can hold a drop at this stage. Once you've gone to World Cup qualifiers and embarrassed the whole region, anyone can hold a drop. So to me, it's not a case of being like, well, it'd be really interesting to see O'Shane Thomas have a good tournament because we need a fast bowler. Yes, we do, but we need everything. Yeah. So anyone who performs realistically is putting their name in the hat for West Indies selection. It's interesting that you mentioned Rakeem Cornwall, Santokie. People say that he can't play 20-over cricket because they say he's too big and you have to hide him in the field. Do you think the same applies for 50-over cricket? Because in 50-over cricket, he regularly plays for the Leeward Islands. So if Rakeem Cornwall in this year's Super 50 was in the top 5 wicket takers and in the top 10 run scorers, does he get in the West Indies team or is he too fat?
What a question. I would put him in the 50-over team because it's like beggars can't be choosers. If he's putting runs together in Super 50, you could argue as well, 50-over, I know you need to go hard, but generally, it does allow you for breathing space. It's not like a T20 where you have to relentlessly bat ball after ball after ball. So in theory, it might be able to suit him a bit more. But I just think, put it this way, if he was too unfit to play the format, he shouldn't really even be playing for Leeward Islands, technically. I just feel if you've made it to Leeward Islands, because then that would be sort of dismissing the nature of Leeward Islands selection, saying, they're just picking an unfit man that can't qualify for West Indies. If he performs for Leeward Islands, it's a professional 50-over tournament, the premier tournament in the region. You have to give him a shot in that West Indies side.
Also want to just quickly shout out Hayden Walsh Jr. He feels like he's a bit of a forgotten man of West Indies cricket. But again, Hayden, I think, is only, off the top of my head, he might only be 31, might only still be 30. So again, it's worth noting that if Hayden, remember Yannick Carrier managed to get into the West Indies side without really putting up the numbers to suggest he should be there. So again, Hayden Walsh, strong tournament, puts himself back into consideration. But again, moving on, that's the Leeward Island Hurricanes to the Windward Island Volcanoes. So their squad, Santokie, Andre Fletcher, captain, Alec Athenays, vice captain, Sunil Ambrish, Johnson Charles, Darrell Cyrus, Kenneth Demba, Shadrach Descartes, Larry Edward, Kavem Hodge, Ryan John, Sherman Lewis, Jeremy Solizano, Shamar Springer, and Tevin Walcott. First things first, Santokie. Last season, Ali Cathanays was captain of the Wimbledon Island Volcanoes. How on earth is Andre Fletcher now captain?
I don't understand it all. You know, Athanays, he's proven himself as a captain. He's got the leadership. So you'd think he'd want to continue that. So unless it was a case of Athanays saying to selectors, look, I want to focus more on my batting in this tournament to cement my place in that ODI side. Obviously, he's had a good start to it so far under Sammy. Unless it was a case of less responsibility so he can focus on his batting, I don't see any other reason why you'd put Spiceman as the captain. It just doesn't make any sense, Mash.
I was baffled, right? So, and again, whenever we say these things, people, we're just being balanced. We're not. Andre Fletcher's been on the podcast. It's not like we got anything against Andre Fletcher. Like, big up Andre Fletcher, but should the 36-year-old Andre Fletcher be playing Super 50? And should the 35-year-old Johnson Charles be playing Super 50? Right? There's a couple of batters who I was looking at the best of the best games, like when Grenada, Dominica, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent played like the Windward Islands Windward Islands equivalent of their Super 50 tournament. GN Benjamin, Johan Jeremiah, Gidron Pope were just three players who are all 26 and under, right? This is before I even mentioned someone like Darren Ned. They're all 26 and under, all performed better than Andre Fletcher in the tournament. I think they performed better than Johnson Charles, all three, and they certainly all performed better than Sunil Ambris. Now, I get it. You want a level of experience, but again, Johnson Charles just got dropped from the ODI side, right? Remember, was he the one who got the call up when Gudakesh Moti couldn't make it to World Cup qualifiers, and he didn't play in the subsequent series against India. Again, Jonathan Fu for Guyana stepped aside and said, I need to step aside. The young players need to come through. Should older players be doing that in the region? Or, because I'm 50-50, Santokie, should they be stepping aside? Or do they have a right to also make a money and eat a food?
Yeah, I think you're putting unfair onus on the players because athletes are never really going to willingly step down. We see that in any sport. Obviously, you're going to get the occasional case where Jonathan Fu, steps aside. But you could argue Jonathan Fu's not like wasn't a main guy in the Guyana side.
True.
He could afford to do that. I mean, if you're like a Johnson Charles and you still technically have a chance to get back into that, or you still have a chance to get into that West Indies side, ODI side, even despite your age, because he's been playing earlier this year, you're not going to give your spot up. There's no reason. One, from a professional point of view, you're making money in this tournament. You're putting your name out there. And also, if you've got West Indies ODI opportunities, you're not going to give that up for youngsters. So it's up to management to make those tough decisions. As I said, it's surprising to see Andre Fletcher captain, but that's no disrespect to Andre Fletcher. We know what he can do. Just at this stage of his career, you'd think it'd be more beneficial to have Athanays as the captain. It'd be interesting to see. Obviously, Jeremy Solizano is in the squad this year from after getting the transfer from Trinidad and Tobago. Again, boxed in as a red ball player, but he sort of lost his form in that format. So it'd be interesting to see what approach he takes for this Windward Islands squad. And if he opens with Charles, that would be an interesting dynamic. But generally, I know Athanays, Kavem Hodge, there are some sort of talents to look out for to see if they can put together runs and make a claim for themselves. So again, I wouldn't say it was to the extent of Jamaica, Barbados, where it's completely rammed with veterans. There are some sort of sprinklings of talent, young talent in this Windward Island squad. They've got a new head coach in Keon Peters. So it'd be interesting to see what they can do in this tournament.
Yeah, just a couple of final points I just want to make. So Shadrach Descartes, we saw bits and pieces of him in CPL. I know that he scored a devastating century in the warm-up in the Windward Islands tournament as well. Can't remember if it was 150 odd, but it was obviously like a barnstorming quick-fire century. So we know that he's a talented youngster. It's worth reminding people that Sherman Lewis, up till 2022, had got into the West Indies team. Then he got injured, so he is a West Indian international. Ryan John was part of that 2016 under-19 team that won the World Cup, but sometimes people forget that. So they've got two pacers who technically are in the one-to-watch bracket. I saw, however, some fans of the Windward Islands volcano raise this point, Santokie. They said Jeremy Solozano, obviously Trinidad, Shamar Springer, and Tevin Walcott, both from Barbados.
Yeah.
It's a franchise tournament, and obviously West Indies is weird. The Caribbean is weird because so few of the teams actually use the ability that they have, which is to take players from other territories. But by taking a Solozano, Springer, and a Walcott, are they blocking the pathway for talented players in the Windward Islands who otherwise might have made the team? Or is the game just the game and it's a franchise tournament? And if Windward Islands believe they need an opener, so they've gone for Jeremy Solozano, and because they don't think they've got another opener as talented as him, is it just what it is?
Yeah, I think once it's a franchise tournament, it is essentially the game is the game. I mean, the draft system is there for sides to fill their gaps with overseas players. It's just like you said, it's weird because there's still nationalism in the region. So we don't see that many transfers go ahead. So when a Solozano does go to Windward Islands, or when an O'Shane Thomas goes to the Leeward Islands, it's a surprise to see players change. But technically, the Windward Islands, it's a smaller population. They've got a smaller talent pool to pick from. They've essentially utilized what they can get. If Jeremy Solozano comes off as an opener, we've not really seen much of him in 50-over format. If he does come off as an opener and puts together runs, I'm sure fans of the franchise won't be complaining too much.
Yeah, 100%. Like say people, again, we're trying to do a snapshot of every side. This is the 5th of 8 teams. We're nearly there. Get in the comments below, though, if you've got any kind of counterpoints that you want to raise. The Red Force, again, no graphics, people.
Mash just typed this up on Word,
Not even the shade of red, just Word document. Red Force squad: Darren Bravo, captain; Josh Da Silva, vice captain; Kieran Otley, Tion Webster, Jason Mohammed, Akil Hussain, Evan Lewis, Sunil Narayan, Yannick Carrier, Jaden Seal, Shannon Gabriel, Terence Hines, Mark Dayal, Kari Pierre, Santokie. Darren Bravo is 35. Sunil Narayan is 35. Jason Mohammed is 37. Shannon Gabriel is 35. Terence Hines, I think, is in his 30s. I could be wrong. Yannick Carrier is 31. Kari Pierre, I think, is 33. We knew that Trinidad and Tobago would do this. But then the selectors would say this is their strongest team. Where do you stand?
Again, it's that balance of they've essentially picked the team that they believe can win the tournament. Darren Bravo as captain. I mean, I think if it was similar to the Leeward Islands, where he was one of a handful of experienced players, I wouldn't have an issue with him being captain. But it's the fact that the squad is so filled with so many players who aren't gonna get a recall into West Indies, Darren Bravo included. I don't think we're ever going to see him in West Indies colours again. So for me, the main issue for me is with the pace bowling. If you look at it, you've got Jaden Seals, Shannon Gabriel, Terence Hines. No Anderson Phillip. Anderson Phillip dropped on form. Anderson Phillip, 27. He was playing ODI cricket for West Indies up until last year. Why have they gone for Shannon Gabriel and Terence Hines, both in their 30s? Ahead of Anderson Phillip? Surely you give Anderson Phillip a go in the squad to see if he can pick up his form, regain his form, because you can't drop off that badly. I know he's had injuries. You can't drop off that badly if you were playing ODI cricket last year. So for me, that's an example of someone missing out. Jai Gooley. It's like every year we have this conversation about Jai Gooley. How old is he? I think he's 27 by now. He's not made it in the squad. But again, it's the balance, because Sunil Narayan's never going to play for West Indies in 50 overs again. I highly doubt he will in T20 cricket. So he's not even a potential for West Indies. He's essentially ruled out. But if you're David Furlong, the head coach in Trinidad and Tobago, and Narayan makes himself available, are you really going to drop one of the all-time great white ball spinners out of loyalty and dedication for the West Indies? Or are you just going to pick him because your job is based on targets where you need to win the Super 50? So again, it's striking that balance, but I would have liked to seen a few more fresher faces in this squad. It just looks like a tried and tested squad. There are some sort of... Evan Lewis is an interesting one. It'd be interesting to see how he does in Super 50. He's an example of, a player in and around the West Indies setup. He hasn't played ODI cricket for 2 years. If he can put together runs and he wants to play for West Indies, he's someone who we could see in December against England. Again, Yannick Carey, pick the Premier leg spinner. Interested to see how he does. Jayden Seals, we haven't got to see much of him in recent times because of his injury, but Jayden Seals, it'd be good to see him playing 50 overs. But Mash, I don't know. What's your opinions? For me, it's just not. It's not a squad to get excited about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. This squad doesn't move me in any shape or form because it's too familiar. I didn't even mention Keown Otley. He must be like 33 by now. Akil Hussein is 30 himself, right? This squad doesn't move me. But Trinidad and Tobago are gonna keep doing what Trinidad and Tobago do till a lot of these players literally retire themselves. It's not a weak, again, it's a bit like Jamaica. It's not weak. I'm not saying it's like a weak team. It's overall it's solid. Mark Dayal had a good CPL. So it's not like Mark Dayal's not in form, for example. Like you, I'm excited to see Jayden Seals. I think really the subplot here or the sub story is around Evan Lewis. All Evan Lewis needs in this, so what is it? It's I can't remember how the tournament's going. They're all playing each other, so you get 7 games minimum, the semi-finals and the final, I presume. So 9 games max, right? All Evan Lewis needs is 2 good scores, and he's back in the West Indies team. That's it, you know. He just needs 2 good knocks, meaningful knocks out of a minimum 7 games, and that's enough to basically put him straight back in the West Indies team. CPL, he looked rusty as hell. He looked like he hadn't been playing enough cricket, so on and so forth. I know he scored a century. Josh De Silva scored a century as well in some of their warm-up stuff leading into this tournament. So he's really all I'm interested in to see if he's got his hunger back for cricket. And I know you said Darren Bravo will never get a selection again for West Indies, but again, Santokie, like Jason Mohammed finished top run scorer 2 years ago, and that got him back in the West Indies ODI side. If Darren Bravo went up as top run scorer and so on, who are we to say he can't get in the team? Because it's not like anyone's performing to justify him not being there, age or no age. So we see, but like I say,
the thing is,
yeah, go on.
We're talking like Evan Lewis is like in his 20s, and like him coming back into the West Indies side is going to be great, but it'll be great short term. But by the time in the next World Cup, he'll be 35. So again,
we're down bad, you know. We're down real bad here.
And then we haven't even talked about for me, the main talking point is Nicholas Pooran just said, you know what? I'm out of here, man. 50 overs, I never want to see it. The Zimbabwe tournament was so traumatic for him. He's just done with the format for good. He's done with Super 50. He was captain last year. Obviously lost in the final, but put performances up. Been our standout along with Shai Hope in ODI cricket this year. Mash, what time frame do you looking at it from outside, what time frame do you see Pooran gone for the next 2-3 years? Or
100%. 100%. If Nicholas Pooran, so he missed the ODI series versus India, didn't he?
Yeah.
So he missed that. He's missing the ODI series versus England. They're the 2 biggest series we have. So from a kind of commercial perspective, so if Pooran is saying, I'm not playing India, I'm not playing England, he's basically might as well not play anything until a year before the World Cup, where he needs to make sure he gels with the team. Because what's the point? What's the point otherwise? If you're going to miss that, don't come back at all. Just go enjoy your life. And go enjoy your life, go play T20 cricket.
Man said the next time the 50 over guys will see Pooran is at Johannesburg Airport on the eve of the World Cup. But also, Mash, it's important while we're there. We didn't talk about it. Barbados Pride. Jason Holder, obviously, not playing for Barbados Pride. He's opted out of the Super 50. With Holder, do you think that's just the last we've seen of him in the 50 over game?
Jason Holder should retire. It's as simple as that. If he wants to have. He's given more than enough service West Indies cricket. He's never truly been an excellent ODI player. We think he is because 97% of the players who play for West Indies in ODI cricket are shit. So we think that Jason Holder is good. But he's actually not very good at ODI cricket. He's just all right. So if he wants to kind of get the best out of the latter part of his career, drop something, kind of like Ben Stokes. Drop something. And if it gets to the World Cup in 4 years' time when he's 35 years old and we're desperate and we're like, boy, you just best come out of retirement, so be it. But he can still play effectively in Test cricket and, of course, T20 cricket maximize his best 2 formats, drop out of ODI cricket. That's what I would do. But it remains to be seen.
It's a fair analysis. And one last talking point. Sunil Narine Mash, I tweeted earlier. It got quite a lot of people commenting. Sunil Narine hasn't played for West Indies ODI side since 2016. However, he's pretty much been a regular on the Super 50 scene, year in, year out for Trinidad and Tobago. Do you just think it's just a case of someone who, you know, has loyalty to Trinidad and Tobago, wants to play? Or does it hint at a sort of wider meaning, the fact that he's still playing 50 over cricket, but just hasn't been selected for West Indies? I mean, it's not like you can say he's out of love with the format or not interested, because he's playing in front of hardly any fans year in, year out for Trinidad and Tobago. So what's your thinking about this all? Because it's an unusual dynamic.
Has it ever really... I'm trying to think. I mean, the last time we heard about Sunil Narine vis-a-vis West Indies was when Desmond Haynes said he told Nicholas Pooran to ring Narine, and Narine weren't interested, or he was led to believe that Narine weren't interested. We'll never know why that was the case. We'll probably never know what the real reasons are. Everyone will always say it's about action and what might happen at the international level. One thing we do know for certain is that Narine loves Trinidad and Tobago. That much we do know, right? And if his country selects him, he's going to play. So we can never call into question his love for cricket from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective. Like a lot of West Indies players, it would not surprise me if somewhere deep down there is a grievance that Sunil has about West Indies cricket, where he felt he wasn't treated right or he was disrespected. And so I don't know this. Anyone who's listening, I don't know this. I'm saying, I'm predicting. I'm giving you a theory that he's probably felt he was never treated properly in West Indies cricket, and just doesn't care to play for West Indies. But again, I always go back to the point I make with a lot of these players: pick them and then force them to say, no, I'm not playing. Rather than give us talk about, I told Pooran to ring him, just pick him, pick up the phone and say, oh, Sunil, I've selected you for the ODI side. Then Sunil says, no, I'm not playing that still. And then you can easily just say in a press conference, listen, I picked Sunil Narine, but he said he don't want to play. There, done. Argument done. And we never have to have this conversation ever again. But, you know. Anyways, let's move on. Penultimate team. The academy squad is just based off what the West Indies emailer said. So this is the West Indies Academy. Naeem Young, captain. Akeem Auguste, Joshua Bishop, Teddy Bishop, Carlin Bowen Tuckett, McKenny Clark, Matthew Ford. You would have thought Matthew Ford might actually have been in one of the senior sides. Leonardo Julian, Johan Lane, Kamani Melius, Matthew Nandu, Ashmead Ned, Kelvin Pittman, Kevin Wickham. I mean, it is what it is. This squad contains a lot of what you would call the kind of talented youngsters that everyone's been talking about in the region for a bit of time. We don't know how they're going to go in the 50 over format. We know that Naeem Young is relatively experienced compared to the rest of them. You'd say that Matthew Ford is relatively experienced. I think he played for CCC last year. He's relatively experienced compared to the rest of them. Kamani Melius has got a bit more experience. Ashmead Ned should probably, if all things were right, would be in a first class, would be in another franchise somewhere. But everyone's got a lot of left arm spinners. Nandu, again, in the future, you'd love to believe that he would get in the Guyana team, but they've got Chanderpaul, they've got Hemraj, Kevlin Anderson's probably ahead of him in the queue, etc. Kevin Wickham, same for him with Barbados. So it's a nice squad. It's players who in 4 years' time, Santokie, you would love to believe, to look at that list, and in 4 years' time, in 3 more editions of Super 50, you'd love to believe that they're established members of whichever franchise they're playing for in the tournament. But here's my caveat, Santokie. Would you be surprised if 3 to 4 years from now, none of them have kicked on in their career?
No, I wouldn't be surprised. Because often it does feel like you're playing in spite of the system. But so again, I'm optimistic. Hopefully some of them can break through. As you said, there's some talented names. I think Keegan Simmons and Kirk McKenzie's for Jamaica. Keegan Simmons isn't in the side, so they'll probably have a new opening pair of Matthew Nandu and Kimani Melius, who, you know, we've seen them play in CPL. Nandu in particular looks like 50 over. He played in CPL for Guyana Amazon Warriors a few games. It looked like it was slightly fast-paced for him, but we've seen what he can do in red ball cricket. So I'm hoping 50 over strikes that middle balance for him. Kimani Melius, we know he has the potential to be an explosive opener, sort of in that Evan Lewis, Johnson, Charles mode. So excited for that. As you said, Naeem Young as well, experienced captain. McKennie Clark, Teddy Bishop, being picked up by franchises. We know how they're held sort of in terms of their potential. So overall, Mash, I think this is probably the most, alongside Leeward Islands, to get optimistic about this. This is literally the future of West Indies cricket. So as West Indies fans, you can only hope and pray, you know, that these guys can put up consistent performances in the next few years.
Do you know what you just mentioned? Keegan Simmons, right? So let me go back to that West Indies Academy side from last year. So Keegan Simmons last year was the West Indies Academy side's top run scorer. He scored 174 runs at 30, right? Keegan Simmons is no longer in the West Indies Academy and he's nowhere to be seen, Santokie. Meanwhile, Trinidad and Tobago selected Kieran Otley, who's 34, 33 years old. Do you see where I'm coming from? Exactly. So you can, this is my worry. You can perform for West Indies Academy, but then once you're out the academy setup for whatever particular reason, then what? What's next for you? Like, who's picking you up? Where you gonna go from there? Because if the territorial selectors are still being dunces, then how does your career progress from there? Exactly. So that's just my worry.
And I think this is why I think rather than having it as a CCC, which we'll get onto next, combined campuses and colleges, rather than have that sort of team, I think you should essentially mold it into a best of the rest side. So players who fall in that gap after the academy, but not in the franchise sides, can sort of play for another team. I think that would perfectly sort of create a pathway.
It's worth pointing out again. So obviously, the West Indies Academy played earlier this year in the First Class Championship. They played in the Headley Week series after Guyana had won the championship. They put a Team Headley, a Team Weeks, which was the best of the tournament, three-way tournament between those two teams and the West Indies Academy. West Indies Academy were better than both of the professional first-class teams, right? However, in last year's Super 50, West Indies Academy were actually very, very weak. And I think they beat Jamaica, but everybody else basically beat them, right? They struggled to score a lot of runs. I think Keegan Simmons scored 2 50s. Joshua James got one. Kevin Wickham got one. In terms of wicket takers, Joshua James, again, was very good. Joshua Bishop was good. Kevin Wickham got some wickets. But other than that, they were a weak team. And this team on paper, whilst talented, looks young, Santokie. And I think maybe again, it wouldn't surprise me if they're exposed a bit. Because all the other teams are super experienced. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if they're exposed. But I'd love to see them be competitive. I'd love to see them beat some of the old man teams just to kind of further hammer home the point about what are we doing. But I suspect that they may suffer a bit this year. You're muted.
I was going to say definitely Mash. I've said last but not least, I don't even know if they've announced the squad. We have to combine.
No, I've got it.
Oh, you've got it? What?
That's it.
Oh, no. Did Ganga get back to your email yet? I'm waiting for his
reply. I got my reply, you know. I got my reply. So as things stand right now, as based on the flyer that went round for CCC, they are currently in a training camp for the selected team. It should have started 4 days ago. So I am assuming we will find out what the actual squad is in 2 or 3 days' time. No one knows who's involved. You would love to believe that it's something akin to what Santokie said, that it's the best of all of the franchise players who didn't get into their squads, who emailed Darren Ganga and said, yeah, I'm going to study a course and I don't know how this all works. I don't know if they go to uni and then they play some. I don't know what's going to happen, right? But we do know, Santokie, that Shane Dowrich is the captain. So with Shane Dowrich as captain, it's quite similar to what happened last year, where Dennis Ramdin was captain last year. Shane Dowrich obviously is much younger than Dennis Ramdin. Shane Dowrich, I think, is 31, 32, maybe. So in some senses, that's good because technically Shane Dowrich is young enough to still be someone who could get a selection for West Indies at some point in the future. But who Santokie? I don't even know any names we can immediately call, but yeah, actually. So for example, Jordan Johnson, who hasn't made the academy team, hasn't made the Jamaica team, you'd like to see a mixture of talented youngsters and then some more experienced pros who are maybe in their mid to late 20s, like a Mansingh, also get a play, right?
Yeah, because last year under Ramdin, I wasn't really sure what the direction of the team was. You sort of had a middling composition, but like you said, you had a Mansingh, Kristen Kalichavan was opening. So if they can get, we mentioned them across the episode, a Keegan Simmons, a Shamar Joseph. If these players who we know that they have potential, but they haven't got an opportunity at their franchise, if they can sort of come into this CCC setup, then it would work. But again, I don't know, what are the requirements? Do you have to be studying an academic course? Does Ganga just basically select you based on a highlights reel you send? Like, how does it? I don't understand how it works. It almost feels as if CCC is run independently or Super 50. It doesn't seem to fit in the organization of the tournament. So I'm very interested to see the composition. But yeah, Shane Dowrich as captain, he's someone who's had enough experience, but can also get back into the West Indies setup if he performs based on his age. So yeah, I think that would be an interesting choice. I probably would have liked to see in Leon Johnson as captain, just because he's famous for his his leadership abilities, and he hasn't technically retired. He retired from first class cricket. He didn't technically retire from any other formats, but I'm assuming now he's just retired from everything. But Leon Johnson would have been a good option. But other than that, I'm excited to see what Dowrich can do as a captain. But I'm just a bit puzzled, Mash, as to what the composition of the side is. I think there sort of needs to be clarification from Cricket West Indies as to what is the purpose of CCC, because surely, if they're advertising 3 weeks before the tournament starts for players to email them, surely there's not an overall vision for that side.
All I know is it's an 8-team tournament. The team better be stronger than it was last year. Let me read some stats, Santokie. Last year, in the 6 matches CCC played, 150 was scored amongst all the players in the team, and that 50 was by Dennis Ramdin, bruv. So if that was the strength of the team last year, it can't be as simplistic as if you're a uni cricketer or if you're a cricketer who's at university or in formal education, come play for CCC. Surely it's got to be a higher level of scrutiny and standard than that, because otherwise, tell Bermuda to come play, tell USA to come play, do something other than, it can't be university cricketers. That don't make any sense. So go on, sorry.
I'm hoping last year was just a one-off badly selected team for various reasons. Because if you look at when they won it in 2018, like they had Otley, Amir Jangu, Carlos Brathwaite, Nicholas Curtin, Akeem Jordan, John Rush Jagasar, Yannick Otley. So there were sort of potential in there. And historically, we know Carl Mayers has played for CCC. So many players have come through the ranks. So I'm hoping this cohort this year has slightly more potential, because last year was probably the worst team I've ever seen enter Super 50 based on my years of watching it.
It's true, though. It's true.
I've never seen a team that bad.
We're not even cracking jokes. They're just true. So for those who
hold on, does this mean Ganga's the head coach then, or what?
Has to be. Maybe that's why he's not at the World Cup commentating.
No way, Bob. You're telling me? No, hold on, Bob. You're telling me you think Ganga turned down a World Cup commentary to head coach CCC?
Listen,
if that is true, the man needs the freedom to the West Indies.
I was going to say, Ganga has risked it all to help West Indies cricket. He said, I'm going to attach my name to CCC this year, but let's wait and see. I'm sure a lot of people wanted to listen to this episode to find out who's actually playing in the squad. We don't know yet. we're as much in the dark as everybody else listening to this, but we do just hope the squad is strong. Listen, Santokie, before we wrap this up, I'm just going to make one final point.
Yeah.
This was the West Indies team that went to the World Cup qualifiers a little over, 3-4 months ago. Shea Hope, Rovman Powell, Shamar. So I shouldn't really, do you know, I shouldn't even say that squad. No, that's the wrong squad to say. Sorry. Bear with me. I'm going to do the India squad. Yeah. So this was the squad that played against India in the recently. Oh, I've lost it. Bear with me. Right, here we go again. This was the squad that played against India in the recently completed ODIs. Shea Holt, Rovman Powell, Alec Athanaze, Yannick Karia, Casey Carty, Dominic Drake, Shimron Hetmeyer, Alzari Joseph, Brandon King, Carl Mayers, Gudakesh Multi, Jaden Seals, Romario Shepherd, Kevin Sinclair, O'Shane Thomas. Now, famously, O'Shane Thomas didn't even play a game. Now, we did win one of the ODIs, but across the 3 ODIs, we scored 1-1-4 in one of the games. We scored 1-5-1 in one of the other games. And obviously, we won the second one when we bowled India out cheaply and chased down 1-8-2 to win, right? My wider point being, Santokie, that in that team, I think only the following players are safe. Shea Hope, Ali Athanaze, Casey Carty, Shimron Hetmeyer, Alzari Joseph, probably Brandon King, Gudakesh Multi, Romario Shepherd. That's it. Anybody else could be in or out, right? So I think I make that point to just say to people that as much as we can cuss this person's age, that person's age, and cuss the composition of any other sides, fundamentally, if you perform, there's so many spaces available in the West Indies team that technically anybody can get in.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's essentially an open market for anyone to get in. And then, obviously, we've discussed, Machel, outside the show, the impact of this T10 tournament taking part in Abu Dhabi. So Carl Mayers, Romario Shepherd have all signed big deals to play in the T10 tournament. So you wonder if that's affecting it, if they've signed as a backup, if they don't get picked for the ODI side, or if they're just going to play that for the money and not commit to the bilateral series. So I think it's an interesting few weeks coming up for West Indies cricket. Obviously, the fact that Pooran, Holder, Shafane Rutherford have signed for the T10 means that they're not in the setup, so I don't think we'll see them. But it has led to some interesting questions because, you know, Akil Hussain signed up, as I mentioned, Carl Mayers, Romario Shepherd, who are sort of regulars in that ODI side. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out. And obviously, this month we're expecting the contract announcements to be made. Who signed contracts for West Indies cricket? So that could reveal a lot as well for the format going forward.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I still believe that a lot of these players have signed up to T10 because they've just signed up to T10 because they don't know. And I don't blame them, by the way, because West Indies squad selections are so erratic. You could be in a squad one series, out by the next series. Everyone's got to protect their brand, protect the bag, and so on and so forth. So I think a few of those players, take someone like Romario Shepherd, who I think is a lock in the West Indies ODI side. He's signed the deal and will probably give the deal up if he gets picked. But I think also within that are some players who are like, I'm going to the T10, irrespective of what goes on with this England series. So it'll be very, very intriguing to see how that all plays out.
And I think traditionally I'd agree with you, Mash. I'd be like, yeah, they're signing it as a precaution. But I just think the fact that there's a lot of money involved in these T10 tournaments, and then also the fact that ODIs have no context to us for the next 4 years, pretty much. I could just see a scenario where even a Romario Shepherd just takes the T10 deal and doesn't play for West Indies, because why are you giving up essentially a significant amount of money to play 3 bilaterals against England when, like you said, selection of West Indies is erratic? You could get dropped the next series, and more importantly, it doesn't have the same context. There's no World Cup around the corner. If
you're right, and a lot of these players are going to play T10, then we could end up in a situation where the next squad that's picked against England in the ODI series ends up being a player who sent an email to Darren Ganga, had an okay Super 50, and from that went straight into the West Indies team, bro. Oh my God. Oh my
Listen, West Indies, you know, it's where dreams become reality, you know.
A man is going to have a career where when someone says to him, how did you get into the West Indies team? And he went, I sent an email, you know. I sent an email. And before I knew it, I was in the West Indies team. So,
but you know what, Mash? Also, just as we wrap up the show, that England series is obviously coming straight after the World Cup, pretty much. England are going to pretty much send a reserve side.
yeah, 100.
So this is going to be as low-key an ODI series as you can happen. So I just feel all the ingredients... I mean, I'm hoping that is not the case, but I feel all the ingredients are there if we were to see a sort of, not a revolt, but, you know, players not playing for West Indies because of these T10 deals, just because of the circumstances around ODI bilaterals at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good enough. And if that does happen, it will drive another nail in the coffin for all the people who are saying, boy, ODIs need to go. Because as much as a TV company will show an West Indies England series, once they find out that it's a West Indies B team versus an England C team, I'm sorry, no amount of money in the world is enough to make people want to waste their time watching that. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how it all goes down. But listen, let me take this off the screen. People, thank you so much for joining us today on this show. It's probably gone a bit longer than we thought it would go, but when you've got an 8-team tournament, you have to do quite a bit of talking around the teams. Like I say, we know that there'll be people from all across the different nations of the Caribbean. Some will have agreed with us, some will have disagreed. There might be some players watching who are waiting for the day when you can punch at least one of us up. But that day will have to wait until you catch us. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. As usual, people, like, share, subscribe, particularly the subscribe part. Subscribe, man, to Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Also, if you're watching this video, well, you will be watching this video, YouTube, because it's not live. Comment on below. Who do you think is going to win the Super 50 and who do you think is going to be leading run scorer and wicket taker? It'll be interesting to see what people think.
We didn't even answer that, actually. Who do you think is going to win this year?
Who's going to win? I'll go Trinidad, you know, Trinidad and Tobago.
Barbados.
Oof.
I think Barbados might have a chance this year, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think Barbados. I'd love it to be Leeward Islands or one of the islands, but I think Barbados this year will take it. But
I'm secretly hoping for CCC, you know.
The people's champions. But people, like I say, like, share, subscribe. Also, if you want to make a contribution to Caribbean Cricket Podcast, you can go to www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket, where you can contribute for as little as $1, £1, £1 rupee, £1 yen, whatever your currency is. Your support helps us keep going. See you on the other side soon. We'll have some more content coming. Thank you as ever.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.